everyone. Ramadan Kareem. Thank you very much for tuning in today. We are having another session of Sustainability Now to find out more about Careers Network. And today our two speakers will actually take us through how to interview people of determination. So I wanted to tell you that this session is open to any questions. Please feel free to use the box comment and we will come back to you. Just to remind you all, this is not a platform neither for complaints nor for job opportunities within Emirates NBD Group. Just before we start on the session and before I actually introduce you to the two speakers, I wanted to give you a bit of background about Emirates NBD and the role that we have been doing when it comes to inclusion of people of determination in the society. So we believe that there are no barriers for people of determination and they should achieve the same dreams as anyone else. So through our Together Limitless platform, we actually support and promote financial inclusion by making our branches accessible to our customers with disabilities, but we also promote inclusion in the workplace. So in 2016, the Careers Network program was launched in partnership with Menzil and CDA, the Community Development Authority in Dubai. And the idea of Careers Network is actually to connect individuals with disabilities looking for a job, as well as employers, so it could be government entities or private organization, to diversifying their own workforce. So what we do in the Careers Network, we not only provide profiles, but we also ensure that we provide the right tools and the right support, from workshops to raising awareness to job coaching to supporting employability skills of people. So if you're looking to diversify your own workforce and hire a person of determination, please reach out to us on the Careers Network website page, which is on the Emirates NBD website, and leave your details and someone from the team will get back to you. Again, I just want to mention for the new joiners that this is not a platform for complaints, not for job opportunities within Emirates NBD. So I'd like to introduce you today our two speakers. So we have Garima, who is our HR manager expert in Tanfi, and we have Summer, who is the head of programs in Menzil. So welcome, ladies.
Thank you so much, Elodie.
You're welcome.
Everyone.
All right, so I think now we can start on the question. As I was saying earlier, our two speakers will take us through what are the different type of questions that you can ask, but also the do's and the don'ts. There will be in the audience a lot of HR experts with a lot of questions. Please today, feel free to ask us any questions and we will respond to your question on the spot. So I think we can, start the conversation. So one thing that we have experienced in the Careers Network program, whenever some of our partners have hired, was a bit of struggle and misunderstanding when it came to interviewing people of determination. A lot of HR, although they were experts in interviewing, conducting interviews, when it came to how to interview, how to maybe adjust the interview practices or process, that's something that actually they were asking quite a lot of questions, which is why today we are having that session. So what I would say is maybe we can start with Summer. We can start with some general tips, Summer, on interview, and then later on we can drill down into all the different types of disabilities and then finish on what are the questions that you would suggest that we should ask and the question that we should avoid.
Oh, thank you, Elodie. Before I start, I would like to share what does it mean disability. As we know, a person with disability is a person who's suffering from a long-term, either physical or mental or sensory deficiency or impairment. Back to your question, or the tips that you would really recommend when we conduct a an interview for a person with disability is we need to put in our consideration he's a person like me and you, but the interview should be modified and adjusted to meet with his needs. That's very important to take it in our consideration. On the other hand, I would like to share one thing. Emirates MBD with Together Limitless Careers Network providing a workshop on disability inclusion. I would highly recommend any HR team who would like to get an opportunity for hiring a person with disability to get this workshop before we interview a person with disability.
Thank you, Summer. I think there's one thing that you mentioned earlier, very briefly about accommodation and adjustments. And I think this is a big part of the interview process, and it's maybe more about, it's more like the pre-interview. So can you just, quickly talk about, what do we mean about accommodation and adjustments related to the workplace, but also to the interview itself?
Oh, great. Oh, thank you. This is a very important question, actually. When we talk about accommodation or reasonable accommodation, we talk about any change in the work environment or in the way the job is performed that enables a person of disability to enjoy equal employment opportunity. I'll give you an example for that. If I'm looking to hire a person with physical disability, I have to look at the accessibility for the place where he will be performing or working in. On the other hand, I will need to restructure the job description itself. If this person will be working as a part-time or full-time, or he wants to have special equipment or assistive technology. So all these will help the person to perform up to his level and will make the work performance to the top level.
Yeah. Okay, great. Thanks, Summer, for that. What we will be doing, and I just want to tell the audience today, although we're going to be specifically looking at interview process, feel free also to ask us questions about accommodation and adjustment. We're going to touch base on, some of the tips. And I think we can maybe start with Garima. So Garima from Tanfit. Tanfit, just for a bit of background to everyone, Tanfit has hired over 40 people of determination in the past few years. So obviously Garima is one that would have a lot of experience to share with us. Garima has also interviewed quite a lot of now employees of Tanfit. So Garima, if we were to start now with the physical, how to interview and some tips for physical disability, can you please, share your experience with us?
Sure. First of all, Ramadan Kareem to all the viewers who are with us today. Thank you so much for joining this platform because it's a great platform for us to know what are the do's and don'ts being HR professionals to follow while we are interviewing people with determination. So to answer your question, Elodie, in terms of starting with physical disability, yeah? First of all, let's understand what is physical disability all about. If you say physical disability is a limitations on person's physical functioning, their mobility or their stamina in terms of to perform a job. It could be by birth or it could be acquired because of some injury which a person must have gone through in their life. Now let's see as HR professionals what we can do. So we will categorize it in two ways. One, before the interview, what are the things we should keep in mind, and during the interview, what all we should follow. Starting with before the interview, first and foremost important thing which we should consider is about accessibility arrangements. Because while we are interviewing someone and calling them to our premises, it is extremely important for us to understand that do we have enough accessibility arrangements in order to interview the person. Secondly, in terms of requiring extra time in order to do any kind of assessments, because today a lot of organizations do a lot of assessments, and while we are doing it for PWDs, we need to be little considerate in terms of maybe extra time which is being given to them to perform that assessment or extra help if they need. Having said that, the job description remains the same. We need to carve out and understand each and every candidate and need to carve out roles and responsibility for each person. Now, coming during the interview, things which we should definitely keep in mind.
You one question. I'd just like to ask you one question about your first point when you were talking about the accessibility. I think here you were talking particularly for meeting rooms, like, or maybe interview rooms. So I know in our offices we have certain, rooms that are only dedicated for, only for interview. So I think I just wanted to maybe clarify to the audience that, that's also one point to consider, the location of the interview, of the meeting room.
Absolutely. So thanks for bringing that up, Elodie, because the meeting room or the recruitment lab plays an important role. And again, in terms of the accessibility, we need to ensure that it is not really far, it is easily accessible for a person to come into your premises. It is easily available for a person to reach till meeting rooms. So it plays an important role. And also someone from the recruitment team prior reaching out to a person and understanding if they need some additional support or additional help for them to come and reach us.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Any tips during interview?
Absolutely. So during the interview, one important thing while we have to keep that in mind is always maintaining the same eye level contact. For example, a person could be on a wheelchair and the level could be little different while you are interviewing someone. So you need to really keep an eye in terms of ensuring while you're interviewing someone, it should be on the same eye level. The seating plays a key role here because the room needs to be really lit up right, and at the same time it should be, there should be less distractions. At the same time, we need to ensure that the crutches, the canes, or the wheelchair are kept within the reach of the applicant, because they will feel much more comfortable while they have all the things which are available for them just near them. So it is extremely important for us to follow that during the interview.
Yeah, of course, not taking away the crunches to a corner in the room. Summer, so thanks very much for that. Summer, is there anything that you would like to add just before we move on to the second category?
Actually, Garima covered the most important part, which is the accessibility. As we know, the person with physical disability, he needs the space to be able to move and to feel comfortable. So I think that's the valid point that to be dropped at this point.
Right, thanks, Summer. And I think another thing I wanted to mention, the audience should be able to see the supporting document that we're taking you through. We have tried to be very concise and only put couple of like the top tips, I would say. Obviously, there will be much more. So again, please use the comment box to ask us any questions. I just again want to mention to the new joiners, this is not a platform for complaint nor job opportunities within Emirates NBD Group. So moving on to the next category, which is visual impairment. So Garima, let's start with you. Any interview tips? We do have some people with visual impairments in Tanfit and in Emirates NBD Group. So please share with us, the top tips.
So let's, when we talk about visual impairment, I remember while we were interviewing someone around 2 years ago, we were also equally new in terms of how do we interview them. And I remember taking a lot of advice from Career Network Group and Manzil in terms of how do we do that. One thing from our personal experience which we felt was in terms of, again, categorizing in pre-interview, certain arrangements needs to be done and certain arrangements while you are doing the interviews, especially in visual impairment. So let's begin with in terms of guiding a person. So as we know, the person is not new to the entire environment. It is extremely important for us to make them aware about the environment and about the workplace. So it's always important for us to get the permission rather than jumping and offering help. First, try to understand from the person that do they need some support, and it is only if they are comfortable, that's when we should try to assess them. Now, definitely, if the person is new to the work location, they would need some support there. So, always offer them to hold your arm just above the elbow rather than, we holding them and guiding them to the meeting rooms or the recruitment lab, because that sometimes some of them don't feel very comfortable doing that. So, it is always important to for us to follow the right protocol. Now, while we are doing the interview, especially for visual impairment, always check in terms of the seating, because that again plays a key role, and try to give them some kind of verbal clues in terms of where to sit while they are having an interaction. Again, one important tip is about introducing yourself and others in the room, because as the person have a minimum visual capacity, they won't be able to know who all are in the room, but they are very strong when it comes to their senses. So it is important for them to understand the tone. The voice needs to be really clear, the pitch needs to be extremely clear for them to understand what is really happening, and try to be as much as accommodative you can, because for them the tone really matters, and they would know that how things are shaping up for them.
Yeah, I think, Garima, those are really good tips. And I can definitely relate to the last one when you are saying it is good to introduce ourselves. Because, as you said, the person wouldn't know, and especially when we go for an interview, someone we do interview with multiple people, or maybe with a panel of recruiters. So definitely a good tip actually for each of them to announce and to maybe mention the names and the position. Summer, is there anything else that you would like to add? I've got a question actually. Do you feel in your experience that, a person, like if you're one of the recruiter, would you suggest that, each time you want to talk, that you actually announce yourself? Or like, what would you say about announcing ourselves? And if you have any additional tips?
Oh, thank you for raising that point, because sometimes there's misconception about people with visual impairment. We assume that a person with visual impairment, he has a total loss of vision, but people comes under visual impairment, the people who are having reduced or not, their vision cannot be corrected by glasses and contact lenses. So the studies showing that 5 to 10% of people with visual impairments are legally blind, which cannot see anything. So we don't jump to the conclusion that they need help to mobile around. Let's get to know how can we assess them first before we just offer our help. So this is a crucial point, because they are very sensitive. I don't want to make them feel that you are unable to do things. They are more than able to do many things. Yeah.
Yeah, I think this is a really great feedback, and reflecting on what you both said, it's also to do about personal space. So when you are saying get the permission first before jumping on supporting the person. So thank you both. I'd like now to move on to the next category, which is cognitive disability. Summer, obviously working for Menzies, Center for Special Needs, and especially having a lot of experience with students with cognitive disabilities. I think that would be good to first maybe understand briefly what do we mean by cognitive disability, and then obviously, because it's a bigger category, what are the top tips before pre-interview and also during interview?
Oh, okay, great. Cognitive disability, this category of people with disability are misunderstood overall, because we assume all of them the same, and there are different levels of functioning, which makes different things to be considered. Cognitive disability as a term, we use it for a person who has a certain limitation in mental functioning and in skills such as communicating, taking care of themselves, learning new things, concentrating, as well as making decisions which affects their everyday life. I would like to mention comes under cognitive disability different things. Learning disabilities, for example, people they are very able to be part of this society but unable to read and write. This category comes under cognitive disability. autism spectrum disorder, also Down syndrome, the people who are employable can fit in this category. When I come to what we should consider before or after the interview, I would highly recommend, if the person with cognitive disability going for interview, just find out if he needs a support from a person or member of family to accompany him during that interview. That would be a great help. In order to understand what his needs and to communicate more about his or her candidate, to understand how can we utilize his abilities. On the other hand, during the interview, I would really ensure a person with the cognitive disability has to be in a quiet place without distraction. That will make a big difference, because sometimes, sorry.
The ability to our maybe attention span. If you're talking about the distraction, I would assume, based on my experience, that maybe you are referring to maybe like a lower attention span for some of them, which is why you are referring to so no distraction. So what would you mean by, no distraction? Would it be the number of people, please?
To have him, the candidate, either person with cognitive disability under spectrum or let's say Down syndrome, these people get easily distracted, as I'm saying. So if I have a person in the spectrum, for example, in an interview, I have a very nice picture behind me. He will start to focus on the picture, which is hanging on the wall, and forgetting that I'm dropping a question. So these minor things, which we take it as a normal for us, that could affect the interview in a very big deal, I mean. So limit the distractions. It means straightforward to the questions. Environment should be neutral, not lots of distractions. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Thanks, Summer. Actually, we are just getting a question now from a viewer asking about, so I think it's also related to the distraction. How many people in the room can interview a person with cognitive disability? What would you recommend in terms of numbers?
It varies. It depends on the level of functioning of the person with cognitive disability. Some of them, as I said, with learning difficulties, they will be able to manage in a normal setup, I mean, in a regular setup. Others, as I said, with cognitive under spectrum, I would recommend 1 or 2 maximum, and the seating, which should be face-to-face to understand and mean the question is being dropped, get the attention of the person, and then take it forward. Yeah.
Great. Thank you, Summer. Any tips maybe during the interview, or maybe Garima, because you have interviewed, quite a lot of our TANFITS employee. So if there's anything else that maybe you want to add on to Summer's tips.
Sure, Elodie. So, like Summer rightly mentioned, these are the right tips which were given to us when we started our journey, right? And again, from our personal experience, what we felt, it is always good to understand about a candidate's profile well in advance, especially for cognitive, wherein it's advisable to know that what are the do's, what are the don'ts to be followed while a person comes in the organization, because it's not only about interviewing, but also once we onboard them, how well they can blend in the workforce in the organization. So what we generally do, and I remember doing it myself, in terms of having just a quick chit chat or one-on-one session with one of a close family member or the coach, just to understand the entire profile about the individual before we get them onboarded. It also helps us to do the right inclusion for the individual. So it always works in the favor. And also, most importantly, in cognitive, we try to make it more of a discussion and not really label it as an interview, because again, we try to focus more on the abilities of a person to do that role which we are offering them. So we don't want to really drill them down and make it really complex for them. So keep it as easy as you can and more of a discussion.
And I think that's a really good tip that, later on we can elaborate, maybe when, we're going to talk about what are the different type of questions and, what are other, questions format to ask. So I think this is when maybe you can, specify how we can maybe rephrase from time to time questions. One more thing, actually. So we're getting a question about the support person. So Samar, you have mentioned that this is actually fine. That some people will be coming to an interview, maybe with a family member or maybe with a friend. So in your experience, or like, what can you, like, Garima, is that okay, for HR to actually bring, a support person alongside? Is it?
From an HR standpoint, especially if we categorize for cognitive, yes, it is absolutely okay because that gives a sense of being comfortable for the candidate. So we always encourage all the one of the family member to escort the candidate, and in case the family member is not available, then the coach to do so. So it is absolutely okay. In other cases, we again ask prior to the interview if they really want and they want to be more comfortable. That's when we take a call on case-to-case basis.
Okay, thank you, Garima. Thank you very much for the insights. I want to move on to actually the last category before we start on the type of questions. So the last one is about deaf or hard of hearing. So Summer, can you just take us through, some of the tips regarding this category?
Okay, thanks, Elodie, for specifying this hard of hearing, because when we say hard of hearing, that means complete or partial loss of the ability to hear from one or both ears in the adult, which can create difficulties with the person to communicate and interact at any situation. So this is where we have to consider it if we want to conduct an interview. I would really need to consider, find what is the preferred mode of communication in order to run the interview, because not all of them, they are totally having like hearing loss. Some of them, they are using hearing aids or FM systems or any mode of communication which will help them, or lip reading, for example. Which would makes me jump to the next point. If I'm conducting an interview, I would make sure not to cover my mouth when I speak. Imagine, as we read lips when we talk to each other. So especially a person with hearing loss, he is using lip reading. This is something that we have to make sure. And also the lips, I don't exaggerate, either raising my voice or move my lips excessively, which makes it difficult for them to understand. We have to talk in a neutral tone, but showing the lips while we are talking.
Yeah, it makes sense, and also a bit awkward, I would say, if someone is exaggerating the lips movement. So, Summer, if we are not able to sign, okay, if the recruiter cannot sign, then what would you suggest? Could we, again, I'm assuming that person could come with a support person, but I was thinking also, can we use pen and paper? Can we use maybe some, maybe iPad or, iPhone? What would you suggest as an alternative?
Oh, actually, that's a very good question. Nowadays, with assistive technology, using mobiles, I've faced this many times on the meetups that we have. Most of the candidates with hearing impairments using their mobiles to text as a mode of communication. So that's an ideal way. If we won't be able to communicate verbally, there is another way to communicate by using tablet or mobile to text whatever they want to express themselves, and we can convey the message by texting them also. Or use an interpreter where they will be a great help for us if they are available, because they will read and they will translate by interpreting all the conversation. Yes.
Okay, great, so great answer. And actually talking about interpreter, so we have Chris in here, who is actually our American Sign Language interpreter for today. So hi, Chris. I think what we could maybe do, obviously no one would be fluent in 1 hour session, but maybe that would be good, Chris, if you can just teach us quickly how to say maybe hello, how are you, and nice to meet you.
Oh yes, I would be very happy to teach you.
Okay. So how do you say, Chris? How do you say hello?
So for hello, you just use your hand and then just say hello.
So easy one.
Yeah, hello. Yeah.
Okay. And Chris, how do you say how are you?
So for how are you, you can say how. So you bend your hands, put it together and point it outward. How you. Okay.
Oh.
Good, ladies. And anything else you'd like to learn?
So how about maybe nice to meet you or welcome? Something easy, Chris, for us.
Okay, so for welcome, it's just that, welcome. So your hand pointing forward and then put it on your chest. So welcome. Okay.
Right.
And then nice to meet you would also be easy. It's just one palm. You brush it across your other palm, nice. And then two index hand meeting together. So nice to meet you.
Lovely. So nice to meet you. And thank you.
And thank you would be this. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you so much. Obviously, for the viewers, if you are interested in knowing more about American or maybe Arabic sign languages, I'm sure you would find a lot of courses online, but it was just a nice transition from what Samar mentioned to get to learn few signs for today. So, ladies, thank you so much. I think we have covered the different type of categories. So I'd like now to move on to what are the questions that you would advise not to ask? What are the questions that instead of asking, maybe we could rephrase? So we talked earlier about how important is it to actually speak maybe slower when it comes to interviewing someone with cognitive disability, maybe to use easier words. So maybe Samar, if you want to tell us more about maybe the type of formats are again maybe more specific to people with cognitive disabilities, and then Garema, that would be good to hear from your side what are the questions obviously that as an HR that you shouldn't be asking, and what have you asked instead?
Okay. Would you like to start, Garima, from your experience, and then I will let you know from my side, because we need to consider the type of disability when we drop the questions. This is one thing we have to consider. The other hand, the language has to be really looked at carefully. So I would really suggest, if Garima gives me from your own experience, how usually you drop your questions and how you feel the difference between different types of disabilities, and I will cover up on that.
Sure, Samar. So, Elodie, in terms of questions, which we recommend not asking at all, even not only from an HR standpoint, but anybody, being it in the hiring team or anyone who's interviewing the candidates, questions which we should certainly refrain ourselves asking must be, do you take a lot of medication? These are the questions we shouldn't be asking, or asking an individual, do you take a lot of annual leaves? Or questions like, have you ever been fired because you took a lot of medication or leaves, or how often you visit the doctor, and are you sick a lot? Or for example, imagine a person on a wheelchair, and even if the person is not comfortable, directly asking, oh, so how did this happen to you? These are definitely a no questions which we shouldn't be asking as an employer, because it could not be a right situation to be in, and it could be really troublesome for a person to answer those. Instead, questions to ask, I can just add on like one or two questions like, try understanding what type of accommodation would you require if you start working here. For example, I remember we were hiring someone on a wheelchair, and we were trying to understand if the staff has a certain level in terms of while they are working, in terms of the workstation, this person who's on a wheelchair, do they need the level to be at the same level, or do they prefer it to be little down? So understand about the accommodation, it really matters. Secondly, in terms of any specific device or any software which they need in terms of accessing or while communicating or doing emails, because device is something which plays a key role while we are accommodating. So it is really important. And also try to put across a question in terms of would you need any changes to be made here in your work environment while you are working here, so that they will open up and they will tell you if they need special accommodation.
Okay, thanks, Garima. I just wanted actually to come back to the second point, because we actually got a question from someone that is asking, do you suggest any other assistive technology to use in an interview? So in your experience, both Summer and Garima, have you ever come across any interviews where assistive technology played a key role actually?
Yeah, I would say if the candidate comes through Careers Network, after we identify the needs of this candidate, we highlight the mode of communication which will help this candidate to express himself or to use, and we can understand. For example, if the candidate with visual impairment, he has a software which can be used on his mobile and his laptop, which can be facilitating, or hearing impairment, as I said. So assistive technology usually comes with the candidate who's suggesting what can be used. We can use, as I said, interpreter in case of the person who has he has totally hearing loss in order to communicate. So I want to point out the communication point is the crucial in any activity in the daily living for people with disability, specifically when we talk about interview, because miscommunication can lead to not a desired results for both parties. So, yeah, back to, yeah, sorry.
I think just one more, I just want to add one thing about when you're talking about the interpreter. I would say also that most of the people with that are deaf or hard of hearing, they would always have friends or family members that actually, can sign. So I would definitely recommend the recruitment team to actually encourage the applicant to come along with someone. So Summer, please, I think you were about to mention one.
Yeah, the language actually has to be really looked at when we talk about a person with disability, especially cognitive disability. I'm not going to drop a very complicated, long questions. I need to make it very straightforward, simple. I'll give you an example. If I'm asking a person with cognitive disability, not like high functioning, can you share with me your address, or can you give me where do you stay? I would really go straightforward. Where do you stay, rather than just your address or PO box. It's a very complicated thing for them. Or to ask them, how old are you, rather than just can you give me your date of birth, how many years of experience. These kind of questions, if we frame it in a very straightforward sentences, it will help to run the interview smoothly.
Okay, and I think one more point that I want to add, based on one of my experience actually last year attending an interview with someone that was deaf. The recruiter was actually talking really fast, and Summer did mention also it's not just about the format of the question, but it's also she did mention about the speed, and because they are with lipping, it is really important actually to make sure that we are talking at a very distant pace. So I just wanted to add on this point. Garima, I have so we just got a question that actually I think you would be best to answer. So what advice would you give to companies that are nervous or hesitant about introducing people with disabilities in the workplace?
Thank you, Lily. That's a good one because it is about from where you start your journey. So if I have to recollect 3 years ago when we started, we had just 5 PWDs in the entire organization. And yes, definitely as an employer, it's a total change in mindset, and it takes a lot for people to adopt to that, to agree to that. So what really worked well for us as an organization was about a top-down approach. I would say from our exco members to our senior management, everybody was totally on board with this idea that we really have to do something to give back to community, and it is not easy. Definitely, if you ask us today, do we don't have challenges? Yes, we do. Did we not face any issues? We did. But it is all about you have the right spirit for you to really do it. So I would say the most important thing is a top-down approach. If you are a new organization who wants to incorporate this, always try to get your seniors and your top members to be on board with the idea so that it is much easier for us to cascade it down and for the entire organization to follow. And obviously having the right tools and techniques to follow, because nobody would want an environment wherein you might have 20, 30 people and they do not have the right inclusion way, or they don't feel comfortable. So it is not about just hiring more and more numbers, but it is also cherishing and ensuring that we do take good care of them.
Thank you. I think, thank you so much, Garima, for answering that question. And that's what we mentioned also earlier. We are getting a lot of questions, but unfortunately, our session is now coming to an end. So I would say for any of you that wish to reach out to us, please feel free to just drop your details on the website, on Carriers Network website, which is on the Emirates MBD website page. And we would be more than happy to actually share best practices from some of our hiring partners, but also support you towards your journey to inclusion. So I just wanted to again thanks Garima and Summer for all the great tips, all the great interview tips that you have shared, and I really hope that the audience actually found the session useful. We can go on and on, but it has been now half an hour. So thank you all. Thank you, Chris. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. And we hope to see you soon. Take care. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.